Hola, it's me, Trashcan.
Welcome everyone.
Yo, what's going on, dude?
Good. It's been a while.
It's been a hot minute, man. We're gonna be doing a tier list, going over all of the players going to Worlds, and we're gonna go through role by role.
So we're doing best top laners first, because that's obviously what people probably want to see the most, I think.
Let's start going through it here, through some of these top lane choices. Now, for everybody watching along, these are going to be Slash's picks. I'm curious what you're gonna say. I'm not gonna be here for a ton of pushback or anything like that.
Okay.
But I might try to figure out why something is so high or so low, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll just start in order. I have them pretty much in order from like how they're ordered in game. So we have APAC first. First guy, Miva, is from Omo Abyssinian. I'm probably butchering how you pronounce that.
No, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Abyssinian. Yeah.
He played mainly Blastoise and Lapras. He looked fairly decent on them, but those are obviously easy Pokemon. He definitely, like, his macro, his mechanics looked good, so I have him in S tier, is what I'm thinking.
Dang!
Starting out,
well, the way you were pitching that, by the way, I thought you were starting off the gate with, like, a B tier. That sounded like a B tier pitch.
I will say this is, like, low S tier.
Ooh, low S.
I should stress that I think APAC East is probably, if I had to say there's 4 regions tied at Worlds that I think are the best at Worlds, it's going to be NA, EU, and both APAC regions, APAC East and West. So I have a lot of respect for them.
Look really good right now.
Yeah, they look really good.
Cool.
Next, we have the top laner for Orangutan. Also, this is just going off of regionals. Players probably played better during the year, but I do think he's better than Miva, even though I believe Orangutan lost to OMO in regionals. But he played Urshi, and their blue Urshifus look crazy over in APAC East. They look really good. I was really impressed by that. And he also played Lapras. So he looked around the same as Miva on the picks that he played, but he played like harder Pokemon. So that's why I have him rated slightly higher. Next, we have Lance, who is old guys. So that's the 3rd seed, I believe, in APAC East. I was not a fan of Lance.
This is what people are here for, by the way, Slash. Absolutely drag Lance right now. Destroy him.
I have him in B tier.
Oh, still got the B tier. How awful for Lance. This is horrible. And just so everybody knows, there's no D tier or anything like that. So this is essentially a C tier pick right now. Wow, shots fired. Huge.
Yeah, he played like Machamp, Slowbro, Lapras. Let's just say he did not hit a lot of Machamp Unites. Next, we have APAC West. So RRQ, I don't know how casuals view them, but for pro teams, I think RRQ's been hyped up a bit for like how good the APAC region is. Heard a lot of good things about them. I'm putting Necro, who's their top laner, in S tier. He just looked phenomenal. Like, he played some of these easy Pokemon just like Miva, like Blastoise. They actually played Trevenant top a lot, which I found interesting. You don't really see that in NA, but he looked very, very good on these Pokemon. He was like 1v5 in some games, so I was very impressed by him.
Even if someone picked sort of a more brain-dead Pokemon, right? If they're playing it at like the highest level, then that's obviously extremely impressive.
Next, I have Team NYS, actually. Yeah,
right?
Yamu played Buzzwole a lot, and his Buzzwole looked phenomenal. However, he played like Blastoise and Lapras, and he actually looked kind of bad on them. He didn't really look like he knew what he was doing. So I have him rated below these other APAC guys just because of that. But on Buzzwole alone, he looked really, really good. There's some scary Buzzwole one tricks at Worlds.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Not using the A tier much. This is going to be interesting to see who falls into that.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for APAC, so there's only one player from APAC so far that's going into it.
Yeah, absolutely devastating.
So next I have Mark God, and I actually have Mark God in the B tier too. So unfortunate for these 2 players. So he played Blastoise and Lapras a lot, and he looked really bad at them. He also looked lost, like even more so than Yamu. He actually played Red Urshifu top, which is not very popular in like NA and EU. You don't see Urshifu top just because it's so weak early, but his Red Urshifu looked very, very good actually. That was one pick he looked very good on, but the easier Pokemon he actually looked pretty bad on, which was surprising.
Yeah, okay.
All Might is the next one, and he's the top laner for the #1 seed in India, Seoul Esports.
Here we go. Good luck.
I have him in S+ tier. I think All Might is the GOAT. He looked absolutely 1v9. I think All Might single-handedly carried his team. He just looked insane. He's a Buzzwole one trick. We're very scared of his Buzzwole, and for people that don't know, we're facing him in groups. So good luck to us.
Right.
So next is second seed India. FS Esports. I don't really know what it stands for. Do you?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, Scare is the top laner, and I have him in C tier. He played Lapras, Sylveon, so these really brain-dead Pokemon, and he did not look good on them at all. He did not know what he was doing, really, so...
I mean, now you're gonna get messages. You put someone in the lowest tier possible. This makes enemies slash.
I mean, that's why I have it as C tier. You know, like, still not bad C tier. They made it to Worlds, but not necessarily the highest tier. Next is Japan. I feel like this is where I'll get the most messages, actually, throughout this tier list, because I know there's a lot of Japan fans, but me reviewing all the regions, actually Japan looked like one of the weaker regions. Yeah.
I was watching Japan's winners finals. They had some really solid fighting in their team fights where their positioning was amazing. I thought they had this like incredible bottom path combo.
Yeah, their team fights and mechanics actually looked pretty good. Their mechanics are not bad at all. You also noticed during those games, they actually didn't cover any scores at all throughout the game. Actually, Japan kind of just looked like they had the same meta as last year, just like evolved, if that makes sense. Secret Ship Obuyon, I have an A tier. Actually, of all the games I reviewed in regionals, he only played Sylvie on top.
He's Mystical Fire Sylveon on every game.
The funny thing is, Mystical Fire Sylveon people would say is like a brain-dead Pokemon, but his laning was actually really good. Like, Sylveon's not that strong in lane, and he was winning every lane. That goes to show when you one-trick a Pokemon, you get really good at every part of them. Actually, probably the best Sylveon I've seen. He, like, applied the right amount of pressure in all fights, like, got perfect Sylveon Unites off. Just the perfect unkillable machine, actually. So, however, played only Sylveon. Like, I have him in the A tier because of that. Next, we have the top laner for MJK from Japan. There's some, like, Asian symbols that, like, I don't know what their actual name is. So I call them, like, closest to, like, what the letters they look like in English. So I call this guy HDTI.
Like the worst ways to do this, but sure, go ahead.
He played Urshifu very, very well, and he played Lapras very well. So I do think Japan's a worse region than APAC, but I have him rated higher than these other guys. He looked very, very solid. He played Blue Urshi jungle. A lot of top laners will switch to jungle. I'm sure you've seen that with Overlord on our team too, based on the picks. He looked very strong on Blue Urshifu, and Lapras he looked very solid on too. So I was very impressed by him.
Okay.
Next we have Team Tamarin. That's actually the Japanese team in our group. They also loved Blue Urshifu. However, it was mainly their junglers, so their top laner played Lucario, Machamp, and Blastoise, and I have him in A tier. Funnily enough, he was actually the best Machamp I saw in regionals. His Machamp was actually very good.
If I were you, I'm just letting you know what I would do. Every player that's in my own group, I would be putting them all in the S+ tier. That way, if you guys end up beating them all, you're like, dude, we beat the best of the best in every single category. But all right, fair enough. We finally see a good Machamp player. That's nice to hear.
I don't think he missed a single Machamp Unite. Every Machamp Unite was hit on 2 or more people. So that's very impressive.
Because I feel like I'm just seeing Machamp Unites fly by everyone every day.
So next I have Tonjiji, probably one of the most famous Japanese players so far that we've covered. Yeah. And I have him actually an A tier below Ruru. I was very impressed by him, actually. He only played Lapras, really, but he looked like he knew what he was doing a lot. His whole team kind of looked lost.
Which team is it?
It's Mame's team.
Oh, yes.
They looked very lost in regionals. I think they haven't performed well the whole year, so I feel like this is where I'll get most of the hate comments and like DMs from. I have a lot of these players rated kind of lower. I think Ton looked like the best on their team this year so far. They have a chance to prove themselves at World. Next is Korea. EP, the top laner for Korea, he played mainly Blastoise, Buzzwole, and Urshifu. And I was actually very impressed by it because I don't think Korean's a very strong region.
At least from what I've seen, it seems like a very rough region.
Yeah, next is the second seed of Korea, which is Team 3 Stars. They looked like probably the second worst team, I'd say, at Worlds. So I was not a fan.
Who's the first worst team?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. No spoilers.
All right.
Rora, I have in B tier. I was not a fan of this team at all. They did not look very strong. AK Jill kind of just smoked them. There was like a game, I think, that they flipped it and won, but that was about it. Now we get to the more interesting one. So Falb. I don't think Falb is that known in North America, but I think he is very popular in South America. Like, a lot of people know how good he is. He is the second S+ tier player. I'm actually have him above All Might. So okay. I think he's very, very good. He also is a Zoric player in regionals, and his illusions, just everything about his mechanics looked insane. I think a lot of top players don't realize how strong they are, actually, because in scrims, like Baby Mazo's team is just like, we'll scrim on your guys' servers or whatever, we don't care. So they're constantly playing on 200, 300 ping, and they still put up a good fight in scrim.
Yeah, they seem like a great team.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously part of the absolute death group, so
good luck to them, but I think there's actually a good chance they could make it out. Next is the second seed of Brazil, which is true. I was not a big fan of them. Yeah, they got clapped by Baby Mazo and Omega in their region, so I did not think they were very strong. Their just draft ideology was really bad too, in my opinion. Like, they were first picking Dodrio. I feel like that has to be something with the players too. Like, ultimately draft goes down to the players too. Next is E7 Latin North. E7 is actually probably the most hyped team by pro players this year. I personally think E7 is a little overhyped. I still do have Reggie in S+ tier. He's their Zork player. He's very, very good. I have him above Falvin All Might, actually. So if there's anyone on this team that I think is not overhyped, it's Reggie. He's very, very good. The rest of his team, we'll see. I'm a big fan of Reggie.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of hype for this team.
Yeah. Next is Proifer. So TMB is very, very good. I think they're kind of underrated. I haven't seen many people talk about them. I think they're a very good team. They like lose to E7 constantly in their own region, which is why people don't talk about them much. But I think it's more of a thing of like E7 has a playstyle that counters TMB versus like TMB being worse than them, if that makes sense. TMB could beat teams that E7 could lose to. I'm a big fan of TMB. I have Froy in the S tier right below HDTI. So I've known Froy for a while, a good friend of mine. I think he's very, very good. He plays a lot of mechanically intensive mons as well as easy mons. He doesn't look that good on the mechanically intensive mons, which is why he's not S+ tier, but he looked very solid overall, especially on the easier Pokemon like Lapras and stuff.
Nice. Okay.
Next, I have Pika God, and I have him in A tier above EPE. I think he's the best on his team. Fusion as a team doesn't look that strong outside of Pika God. I think he's very, very good at Garchomp, the second best Garchomp at Worlds, but that's about it. He doesn't look very strong on other Pokemon, which is the issue, and I don't think Garchomp is that strong in the meta right now, so we'll see how far he can take Garchomp.
Okay.
Now we have Latam South. So we have Tempo. I think they were Q-Lash last year and they didn't make it to Worlds, but this team was very strong. I don't know how many times I've been clapped by them on ladder. Like, even though we're playing on like Orange Fiend or some, they're still very, very good. So I'm a big fan of this team. I have this guy at the top of A tier, I believe. I think they're very, very strong, actually. The second team in the region, STMN Esports. I personally think they're the worst team at Worlds.
Whoa! Dang, dude. All right, here we go.
I think APAC is way, way stronger than them, so yeah.
There you go. There you have it, everyone. We were waiting to hear about the worst team at Worlds. They might not even show. That's how bad Slash is.
I think they're like the worst team, but they're like tied as the worst team with maybe a couple other teams. If I had to pick like the worst team, it would be these guys. Next is Europe. So this is Klaus. He has like Asian letters in his name because Klaus stains.
Very fun when you're casting it.
Yeah. I have him rated as the best player so far that we've rated. I think Klaus is insane. I think he's the best player on Talibobo, mechanics wise.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
There are
mechanically.
a lot of mechanically gifted players on Talibobo.
I actually think it's not even close. I think Klaus is the best by far mechanically, not even close.
Jeez.
That's my personal opinion. So yeah, I will say I think I have a lot of Talibo players in S+ tier. I just think Klaus is still the best out of all of them, but I do have a lot of them in S+ tier still. Next is Gatlu, and this might be kind of an unpopular opinion, but I have him here in S tier below Freud.
I mean, S tier is very
it's still S tier.
Strong. The thing I'm most impressed with when I see Gatlu is I feel like he has such a deep pool of Pokemon that he can play with. I think that's really impressive.
The reason I think Noun struggled this year is they haven't had like set roles. So Gatlu will play like jungle top attacker. I just put him top lane because that fits the mons he plays the most in like tournament games. Next, I have Potato Uwu.
It feels like he has a small pool of Pokemon.
Yeah, okay, I have him in S tier, and he's the best Garchomp at Worlds. The Garchomp players have the Garchomp background.
They do. Yeah, they're all like, we gotta get Garchomp in there.
Yeah, Potato is very good at Garchomp, but not like other Pokemon yet. But his laning actually on other Pokemon seems to be pretty good. However, his team fights and like secures on those Pokemon outside of lane are not that good. But still, like S tier, he looks very solid overall. I think all the EU top laners are pretty decent. So yeah, next is watched the top laner for Time to Shine. I have him at the top of A tier. He's a speedster one trick, and like I actually think if he one tricked slightly different Pokemon, he could be an S tier, even S plus tier. But he plays like Dodrio Zoro, and he's not the best at them mechanically. Like he still makes a lot of mistakes, which you can't really afford to do on those speedsters. So he's not like a crazy scary speedster, but he's still very, very good mechanically on those Pokemon. Basically, he'll pop off in fights and stuff in lane, and then he'll probably like int the EXP back and then lose the Rayquaza fight against a lot of like better teams. If he can get slightly better, I think it would be really good for him.
Okay.
Next, I have
Here we go.
Celestial. So I'm not gonna say much about NA players because I don't want to cause any drama within the NA region.
Whoa,
so
right, let's go.
I'm just gonna put him right here, and you can take with that what you will, but I'm not gonna say much. At the end of the day, these are just personal preferences. So next is rolling it down, another NA player. I'm gonna put him right here, and I'm not gonna say much.
Let's freaking go. All right, let's go.
Yep, and then we'll skip Overlord and do him Blast. So next I have Flee, and I have him right here. Again, not gonna say much about it.
That's wild. That's wild. Here we go. All right.
And then the OCE players are last, I believe. And I have Buster as the worst top laner from EXO, which is the first seed OCE. And then I have Joe at the end of A tier right here. So I actually think Joe is the best player in OCE from what I watched. I was very impressed by his gameplay. So I thought it'd be fun for my team that you would rate them. So you rate all the players on my team.
Have to do.
Okay,
honestly.
okay.
Overlord C tier. He's actually
C tier? Okay.
Yeah.
But below right here?
Can you make it lower?
Lower? Okay.
So here's the tough thing about Overlord.
Okay.
I will not be able to fairly rate your team, especially with you on the call. It's unreasonable. But I think he's widely regarded as possibly the best player inside the entire game. By many, many people, I think it's reasonable to have him in the S plus tier. I don't know exactly where he would fall among, the pantheon.
No, you had to do it exactly. I need an exact rating here. Yep.
Where would I actually... I mean, I don't know if anyone feels like they are as impactful as a single player. In fact, it feels like your team strategy sometimes is just like, what can we do to make this player pop off? For that reason alone, I would put him at the top of the S.
Okay, at the top. So you heard it here from Sprinkles, calling all the other top laners trash, and Overlord's the best.
Yes, they're all trash. That's exactly what I'm thinking about this. So there you go. There is your top laner tier list for Worlds from Slash.
Yes, we're on support now. Supports are very interesting. I think you'll be interested by my rankings here. I will say I do think they looked like the worst role in all regions. Just like the players in the support role looked worse than all the other roles. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions to that, but just on average.
Okay.
This is just off face value, so the rankings could be completely different based on like how much they're like shot calling for their team, their macro in game. Because some players could just like look like they have good macro but be puppeteered by like their support player, right?
That makes total sense. Yeah. And of course, it's always fun to speculate with any of this. At the end of the day, you could be 100% right, you could be 50% right, but it's always a great conversation to have about what these teams look like.
We're starting off with OMO Junior Absent. So actually, I used to face this guy on ladder a lot, and I thought he was pretty decent. I had no clue that he was from APAP. Maybe he moved there or something, but maybe it's just like a coincidental like same name, but I kind of doubt it. That's a pretty unique name. Starting off, I have him in the A tier, which is actually pretty high up for like the support tier list. Again, I think they're rated more lowly than the other tiers from what I saw. He played mainly Eldegoss and Clefable, and he looked very good on them. So A tier is a good ranking for the support list. Next is Arenatane's Ikira. I have him in B tier because he had a lot of ints where like he just kind of inted the game, got caught out. That tends to like make what like the supporters and defenders like stand out, like who ints the least. The Mons tend to be fairly easy mechanically, so it's more about your positioning, like not throwing the game for your team and playing well. I've had my fair share of ints in tournaments. I think in May it was like the worst I played. I got caught out several times. Ikira, he got caught out a lot. I will say his Sableye looked very good. He played Sableye one of the games I watched, and he was a demon on Sableye. That game, like he hard carried until a Ray fight, and then he got caught out at Ray, so and that's why they lost. So there is a trade-off there. Next is Old Guys Wayum, and I actually have him also in B tier.
You hate support.
I will say last year at Worlds, it did look like the supports and defenders, besides a couple, were like the worst on the Asian teams. All the carry players on the Asian teams looked very good, but the support players did not look very good. And I think that's kind of carried over this year. I have not seen a lot of good support players either so far in the Asian teams. You actually see other regions higher than like APAC and stuff on these lists. Next, I have Zoe from the first seed RRQ of APAC West. I have them right below Junior Absent. I thought Zoe was very solid, just played Eldegoss and Clefable, and I will say both these players, they played very, very good on their Pokemon, Eldegoss and Clefable. They did not int at all. They had very good unites. I just think those are some of the easiest supports to play. Like, they didn't play Hoopa, which I think is very, very strong in the meta, and it did get banned a lot, so maybe they are good at it, but yeah, we'll have to see with that. And then next is the second seed of APAC West, which is MYS and Rebonds. So I believe this guy actually played Zoroark some of the games, which is interesting. He played Zoroark, Clefable, and Hoopa. And then Yane, who's their jungler normally, would sometimes play support. But it was almost like, it was coin flip who would play what in what game. Like, I was so confused why sometimes Rebonds would play Zoroark, why like Yane would play Zoroark sometimes. Let's just say I was not a fan of Rebonds. So I have him the lowest rated so far in B tier. He looked decent on Zoroark for a support player that was playing Zoroark, if that makes sense, but not like the top of the line Zoroark. I was not a fan of Rebond's Hoopa. It actually lost them a lot of games.
I mean, if you can't play a good Hoopa, that is a problem as a support player.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful choice.
The last supporter is PSL9, and I have him below Rebonds, actually. The APAC supports I was not a fan of, if you can't tell.
Yeah,
look
like it.
Yeah, they did not look very good. Next is number 1 seed India, and I actually have Kiram, the supporter on India team, in S tier.
Whoa.
So I was very impressed by Kiram. Like, obviously, even though like All Might's a very strong top laner, you're not going to be able to like carry the games without like a support helping you. So you need to have a very good support player that knows what they're doing to help you to carry those games as well. Kiram was the perfect support for All Might. Kiram is the one who enabled All Might to do everything he did in the games. So I was very impressed by Kiram. He made virtually no mistakes. He did only play Eldegoss and Clefable, which is why I have him S tier, because again, I didn't see him play those harder supports.
Okay.
I will say though, I only have one player in S plus tier.
Really?
So yeah, for the support.
Okay.
Yeah. So S tier is technically probably the highest tier. Next, I have the second seed India.
Okay.
You wonder who? I want to know your guess. You can guess right now.
The best support player.
In the world, uncontested.
In the world. Uncontested?
In my opinion.
Zervis feels almost the captain of their team, right?
Really interesting.
Is that not right?
I had no spoilers.
I don't know. I think JLs are just insanely good.
I do think JL is insanely good as well.
Okay. I don't think I'm gonna get it.
Okay,
I don't think I'm gonna get it. I feel like Zervis is like really
interesting.
powerful. Okay, but let's keep going.
Pardesi is the second seed India support, and I have him in C tier actually.
I knew you were gonna put him in C tier. I knew how this was going the second you started. Yeah, it sounds like what you're gonna do. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your tier list. These are your enemies that you have to make see in person very soon. So.
I will say I respect all these players and I do think they're good. It's just when they're compared to the best players in the world, obviously someone has to be near the bottom. Doesn't mean they're not good in their own regards.
Trust me, I'm just having some fun with it, but it's obvious that these players are the best that the world has to offer.
Any of these,
or they wouldn't be.
Yeah, any of these players, no matter how lowly I rate them, I think could beat my team on any day, depending on how well they play.
Any team can win.
Yeah, any team can win. So number 1 seed Japan, Secret Ship, their support Yoko, probably butchering that pronunciation. I have him in B tier. He actually had the most unique pool for support so far. Under Ikira, so second in the B tier. He played Pikachu support in regionals, in Secret Ship 1 regionals. So
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that Pikachu support. It's pretty. I mean, it counters Dodrio pretty hard. So.
Secret Ship also played Blissey and Urshifu a lot, and he did pretty decent pocketing the Urshifu. However, there were a lot of missed Blissey unites, which was unfortunate. That's why I kind of have him lower here. Next is MJK. I was pretty impressed by PhD. He played Blissey, and he looked much stronger than the Secret Ship support on Blissey. I do have them in A tier behind Zoe.
Looks like a really good team.
Yeah. Yeah,
impressed.
again, I think MJK was actually the stronger team in regionals. They played grand finals with a substitute player, and they beat Secret Ship with their main player. So they might be the best team in regionals, and they're in TTV's group. Good luck to TTV. Next is Euclid, support player for Team Tamarin, the team in our group. He also played Blissey a lot, and I was not very impressed by his Blissey, so I have him in B tier above PSL 9.
So pretty low.
PSL 9.
One of the lowest that we have so far.
Yeah.
All right.
His
not impressed.
Yeah, I was not impressed by his Blissey that much. A majority of his unites were very bad, either too early, too late, or like on the wrong person. He also did not look like he had the best Blissey mechanics, because most people don't realize, but Blissey is like the hardest support. Maybe like Hoopa is harder like macro-wise, but mechanically Blissey is one of the hardest supports. Blissey is not easy because you have to know how to cancel stuff with egg bombs, like have that perfect egg bomb timing and positioning.
Yeah. Knock them out of portals, get some crazy last hits, knock them out of move. It's a really versatile move for sure.
Yeah, so next is Sweeks. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Do you know the correct pronunciation?
No, I don't.
Okay. I have him right under Euclid. He did not look very strong. Again, this team just looked kind of off this year. They looked a lot stronger last year. I think they're underperforming a lot, but again, this is based on their regionals performance. I do have to put Sweeks here. I think their potential as players can be crazy high. I have a lot of respect for them, but it's really tough that they have such a hard group. I think it's really demoralizing. So next is Chobo on the first seed, AK Jill Korea. I have him in B tier at the very bottom so far.
I just put him C, just guessing. This might not be fair because I don't know what's going to happen when everyone gets together. But for a long time, just everything I see from Korea has not been super impressive.
AK Jill is an exception to Korea, because I have Team 3 Stars, again, I told you, is one of the worst teams in my opinion at Worlds. But AK Jill looked pretty solid, actually. Like some of their players, not all of their players. But Chobo is one of the higher rated players on the team. I was actually impressed by how little they inted. They looked like they knew what they were doing. Next, I have Team 3 Stars Chan, speaking of Team 3 Stars, and he's actually the lowest rated support. We're gonna have a lot more support on this list, and this guy by far is the worst support in my opinion. He single-handedly threw like 2 games that I watched. By himself, he threw the game for his team. Next is Lel from Baby Mazo's team, and I have him number 1 in A tier. Not quite S tier. I think he's very solid. He kind of does what the team needs. His mechanics are okay-ish, and like sometimes he ints a little, so not the strongest support, but definitely not the worst either. Next is Wobblet. Again, I already told you I'm not a fan of Team True. They got clapped in regionals by like 2 other teams. I have Wobblet at the number 1 in C tier. He, I think, had a lot of ints too for his team, where he's just out of position, having to blow like LD Unites for no reason. Next is E7 Minato. I have him above Kiram in S tier. E7, very strong team. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, people are very hyped on this team.
Yep. I think Minato and Reggie are the best on their team. Minato is definitely a good support that helps enable Reggie. Reggie definitely wouldn't be able to do it on his own, so I think it's really important. Next is TMB Texas. I have him at the bottom of A tier so far.
All right.
I think he's solid. What makes a good player is like their mechanics, their macro, their positioning, and their secures. Texas is like one of those players I've never seen him like have a pop-off secure moment, if that makes sense. Like you're playing against a player, they steal a bunch of farm from you, you're like, holy shit, they are so good at just securing, and that makes the games really hard against good players. Texas, I feel like that's what he's really lacking at, and I've scrimmed TMB a lot. Everything else in the game he's like really good at. I think he's a solid support player. He just seems to be lacking in a couple areas. Next is Fusion Esports 6K Soren. I have him actually in 2nd in C tier so far. All of Fusion are not that good besides Pika God and Oramaki. I'm not a fan of their support, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
Scrims don't matter much, but we've scrimmed them around 5 times so far for like a couple hours each time, and I don't think we've lost a single game to them. That's kind of where my personal opinion's coming from.
Fair enough. I think it's a good way to look at it.
Kia is the support for Qlash, which again, I think is a very good team. I have Kia in A tier, I believe at the bottom so far in A tier. Probably like one of the weaker players on Qlash, but still like Qlash is a very strong team. I think they're all very decent players. They have pretty good odds of making another group. Next is STMN Sevis. This is 2nd last in the tier list so far. Another player I just think is lacking too much in a lot of areas. Next is the EU support. So Zervis is obviously in S tier, so not S plus tier.
Quite amazing. Where do you put him in S tier?
I have him right below Minato. So second so far. I think Zervis is very solid, and maybe it's my own bias because I'm good friends with like a lot of Talibobo, so I know what goes on with their team, but it's actually mainly Toon that's telling them what to do. Like Toon kind of puppeteers the whole team, so Zervis doesn't have much to do with the macro.
Where do we put Geese?
So Geese is the #1 support player in my opinion, S+ tier.
Geese is S+, the god tier.
Yep. Geese has just been very solid consistently for a while now. I've just always considered Geese probably the best support, and still this year, yeah. His mechanics are insane. He does like a lot of the macro for nouns as well. He's just very solid overall.
Yeah, Geese is great.
Next, I have Human. Human's very solid as well. I'm just putting him at the bottom of S tier. He's just like very solid, consistent. He doesn't int a lot, which is what you want out of support. So definitely S tier material. Next is Where, which is the support for Time to Shine. I have Where actually right below Soren from 6K on C tier.
Pretty low. Yeah. Okay.
According to Time to Shine, because I'm good friends with them, this is the only girl at Worlds. I don't know if we know the Asian players, so maybe there's an Asian player that's a girl, but that's a very good accomplishment if she's the only girl at Worlds.
She's kind of been floating with a few different roles.
Time to Shine has had a lot of roster issues this year, so I think Where is definitely underperformed in regionals from what I've been told. So we'll see how she performs in Worlds, but based off her regionals performance, this is where I'd put her. Next is Indie Bear. I have Indie at the...
Just Inder now. Just Inder now.
Just Inder. I have him at the top of S tier. Obviously been a very solid support since the game came out. Not much to say except he's good at pretty much every support he plays.
I agree. Very good support.
Next is JL. So I have JL right behind Indie, second in S tier.
JL's also, extremely good.
So I will say mechanically, I think JL is better than Indie. I feel like JL lacks teamwork. He doesn't really play around his team as much as a support should. I honestly think JL maybe picked the wrong role. Like he'd probably do better as like a top laner attacker. Next is Elo. I have Elo right below E7 Minato in S tier. Actually, I said you were gonna rate the players on my tier. On my team.
I know, but you got
no. Let's hear your ranking.
I think look, Elo's an incredible player. I feel like when I look at LG, and I could be diagnosing this wrong. This is just what I see on the outside. Is it feels like there are structures in place to let certain players shine. And I think a support player that's kind of what they're about, you know. Depending on what kind of support you play, you're either peeling, you're making sure your carry can do the damage they need to do, you're making sure that they don't get KO'd. And I think that's pretty apparent when you see who they're paired with on LG. So yeah, I think they do a very good job of that.
Okay, so where would you rank them straight up?
I'd put them right under, what is it, Minato? Right in front of Zervis.
Okay. Next is Akilo. Akilo is one of those players that I feel like most people don't know. He wasn't able to play in regionals, so Pikadev played instead of him. And obviously, like everyone knows Pikadev, so Pikadev's kind of gonna outshine him. But I think Akilo is very good in his own regard, and I have him at the bottom of A tier. I think Team YouTube will actually look like a stronger team with Akilo, just because Akilo is kind of like the cornerstone of the team. He's the foundational block that builds that team. They won May with Akilo, so Akilo is very important to them, but Akilo kind of fits everything the Team YouTube needs. Akilo also got top 4 with TOS last year, which a lot of people forget. He's just been a very strong player, especially since he started very late in the game. I'm a very big fan of Akilo. Next is iClan. iClan I have rated as the second worst support, and then EXO is the third worst support.
Jeez. I mean, it seems like you don't think much is really going on for Oceania this year.
I do want to say I thought iClan was a very solid team last year.
Great,
I thought they were a lot stronger than people thought.
From watching OC, especially watching their regional finals, I thought it was a real mess, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know what was going on in OC, but I mean, Legends reappear, them coming through, they beat iClan, then they beat EXO in the grand finals reset. Like, it was a disaster what was happening.
Legends reappear actually looked like decent. Like, I think I'd rate their players higher than these two teams, but obviously they decided not to go to Worlds after qualifying, so it is what it is. But all right, that is the support tier list.
There are supporters. All right, let's move on to our next ones. All right, we have our junglers right here whenever you're ready, Slash.
Yep. Omo Shua. I was very impressed by his mechanics, actually. He looked like one of the best players in APAC, like probably in the world. So I have him in S tier starting out. He had a very wide Pokemon pool. Like he was playing speedsters like Dojiro Zorak very, very well. He was also playing mages like Venusaur, Solar Beam, stuff like that. And he's playing them very well as well, which I think takes in an insane amount of talent. He's very talented at a lot of different like Pokemon styles, so I was very impressed by him. Shindy is the jungler for Orangutan. I was also very impressed by him. He looked like one of the best Blue Urshifus in the world.
They are a really good team,
yeah.
too.
I have him above Shua actually in the S tier. I think the junglers on these two teams are like some of the best players on their team, if not the best players on their team. Shindy also played so many different Pokemon in every game. I will say the one thing that makes Shindy not hit S plus tier is he was playing like Greninja and Absol, and I think it was actually the reason they lost. We can say he looks really good on like these other Pokemon, and if it was just those Pokemon that I was watching him play, I'd put him in S plus tier probably. Shua he looked very good on the Pokemon he could play, but he did have a couple ints now and then. Shindy, I think, was very, very good on every Pokemon he played, even the Absol and Greninja. But if you're playing troll Pokemon like that, I just think there's probably something wrong with your mindset there. Next is Sync 1. I have Sync 1 in the A tier. This guy also played Pokemon like Dodrio. Didn't seem like he could play much Zoroark. He also played Charizard one game. So I still think he's very talented mechanically, especially on Dodrio. Not much of a Mon pool, and he played Charizard, which I don't think is very good, which is why he's put in the A tier. Next is RRQ. Eeyore looked very talented. I have him in S tier as well, at the bottom so far of S tier. Mechanically, I'd say APAC West, their junglers looked a little worse than APAC East. A lot of people say APAC East is better than APAC West, and that might be why, because Pokemon Unite has always been a game where jungler actually has like some of the biggest impact on the game. But I actually think the attackers and top laners from APAC West are much better than their counterparts in APAC East, and we'll get to those. Eeyore looked very solid, just not quite as good as his APAC East counterparts. Next, I have Yane. Yane, I was not a fan of either. This was the guy that was switching with Rebonds on Zoroark.
Right.
I have him at the top of A tier.
Okay, still pretty high.
Yeah, still pretty high. His Zoroark was actually not that good. It was pretty decent, but it was mainly his Candle. He looked very good on Candle. That put him up here. He also played Blue Urshi very, very well. That's one of the other reasons he's up here. His Zoroark did not look that good. Otherwise, he would be in S tier. Next is Levi's. Levi's was very, very good at Blue Urshifu as well. All of these players are kind of just masters of Blue Urshifu. So I have him in S tier at the bottom so far.
Did it get nerfed since that? Or, because I know their tournament was like 4 hours, right? Their regionals? Or has it just stayed the same?
I don't know the exact time it got nerfed. It could have been nerfed right after that. The nerf was only to Blue Urshifu's early game. So once you hit like mid-late game, it's literally the same. I don't think it'll make much of a difference. I think there's a lot of teams that will still pick Urshi at Worlds.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I actually think teams are gonna play Urshi way more than Zacian. Next is first seed India. Snowy, I actually have in B tier, the first B tier. They played Chandelier and Glaceon, and they would get caught out a lot. I watched him walk into Lucario a couple times as Glaceon and just die. Walked right into like pup range and just died. So the position on mages was a bit rough. Next is Blair. Blair played Speedsters on second seed India. I was just not a fan. I also have them B tier below Snowy. They actually looked like one of the better players on their team, not by much. Next is Secret Ship. DLR, I'm a big fan of.
Me
very
too.
big fan of.
I think DLR is really good.
I put DLR in S tier at the top of S tier so far.
Yeah.
He looked like the best player on Secret Ship by far. Absolutely insane mechanics on every Pokemon he played. He would even play like Mew and be very good at Mew. So this guy is...
their Mew was excellent.
Yeah, this guy is insanely, insanely good. Next is MJK. So I couldn't really find letters that this guy's name resembled. So I think you'll like the name I came up for him.
Okay.
So the first letter kind of looked like a Christmas tree. So I just call him Tree.
Good. Yes. Good idea.
I will say I'm Asian, so I just don't know Japanese. I know Mandarin.
No, it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. I don't think you're being like mean to them or anything like that. I think it's a very fun way to choose how you're going to describe it.
So,
it is.
Yep, Tree, he played Dodrio. He was very good at Dodrio. He also played like Slowbro some games, so it's very interesting. He looked pretty good on all the Pokemon he played. I have him at the bottom of S tier. Next is, I had them called 2J for 2 Japanese letters.
Okay.
I have them at the bottom of A tier. This is the jungler for Team Tamarin, the team in our group. They played Blue Urshi very, very well. If it's just Blue Urshi, all the Asian players are like around the same level. All like S plus tier at Blue Urshi, honestly. They all looked insanely good on it. They played a lot of Zoroark, and their Zoroark was just not very good. They didn't really illusion anything, which I think you have to be very good at on Zoroark. Just on the other picks, they didn't look very strong. On Blue Urshifu specifically, they looked very good. Next is PYI. So I actually have PYI at the top of B tier. It's probably team issues that are making these players play worse, but PYI's team actually lost to Team Tamarin and got clapped by their jungler, so they do not look so hot right now. I think they're very good players, but this is based on on the performance just in regionals, even throughout the year. They haven't looked very good. So I faced PYI on ladder quite a few times and he's very good. Next is S4L, who's the jungler for AK Jill, first seed Korea. This guy was actually pretty good. I have him right below PYI, which I consider good for Korea in B tier. He looked like the best player kind of on his team behind EPE. He had a couple ints every now and then, but he actually played Gardevoir and he got like 2 5-man Guardy unites. Guardy's not in the meta, which is why I don't have him rated higher for that.
I feel like I remember this player. Maybe I've just been seeing them recently. Were they at Worlds last year?
Yeah, they were at Worlds last year, I think.
Yeah.
I think they were on No Show, yeah. Next is Team 3 Stars J-John. So I actually have him as the worst jungler.
Yeah, I knew it would be pretty bad.
He's actually like pretty good. I'd say just like the jungler role, there's just very good players for the jungler role.
There's so many.
There's so many.
I mean,
so like,
as you look down this list, it's just an absolute murderer's row of top tier players.
Compared to other roles, I'd say like this J-John guy is actually really good and he'll probably pop off at Worlds. Compared to the other junglers, he's probably the worst out of all of them at Worlds. Next is Baby Mazo. This is the first guy I have in S+ tier. I think he's very, very good. He has like such a deep Pokemon pool too, and he's just so good at all the Pokemon. We've been scrimming them recently and they opened up our eyes to Gudra. We did not think Gudra was that good until we scrimmed them and we got absolutely destroyed by Gudra.
Yeah, Gudra it's been buffed I think 4 times now or 3 times, and it's just really risen. It's finally no longer Midra.
You'll see a lot of Gudra at Worlds actually, because
I think so.
It absolutely destroys Dodrio. Next is Guizin, and I have them at the bottom of B tier. I'm just not a fan of True, if you couldn't tell by now. Always have their players rated kind of lowly. Next is E7 Sherlock, which apparently he's not making it to Worlds.
I guess not, yeah.
But I had him in S tier. Next is Frank. He's pretty strong as a jungler, but compared to these other junglers, he just doesn't cut it as much per se. So I have him right above 2J.
What is it with these junglers and not doing anything to their trainer cards? Come on.
Next is Orimaki. I think Orimaki is fairly decent as a player, but again, compared to these other junglers, I actually have them at the top of C tier. The problem is that Orimaki is not that good at speedsters, which I feel like is a must as a jungler, or at least your top laner needs to know them. Orimaki does play some Zoro, but compared to these Asian Zoroarks, I just don't think it'll make the cut. I do think they're very good on other Pokemon. Like, I believe they were a top laner before they joined this team, and I thought Orimaki was very good at like Lucario and stuff. I just don't know if the jungle rule suits them that well, so we'll see what happens. Next is Anemo. So Anemo is the jungler for Q-Lash. Again, I think Q-Lash is very, very good. I have him at the top of A tier.
Okay.
The one thing with Q-Lash is they looked very good mechanically and macro-wise, but sometimes in team fights they just int and walk up a little too far, and Anemo was no stranger to that. Just on like Glaceon, sometimes he'd walk up a little too far. Hopefully they don't do that at Worlds, because obviously they know that's a mistake. If they don't do that, I think their team looks very, very strong, just like throughout the game. Next is SCN Esports. Their jungler Zynos. I think Zynos is the best player by far on SCM Esports, and I actually thought he was very good. So I have him right below Frank in A tier, probably the highest rated player on SCMN. He actually looked very, very strong. He was a blue Urshi player. His blue Urshi looked very decent, so I was very impressed. Next is Utah. I actually have him as the #1 jungler in the game.
Yeah, he's incredible. It'd be hard to argue. He's just unbelievable. I obviously expected this to be up in the S+ tier for sure.
And Adesu I have as the second best jungler in the game.
Adesu is
right
unbelievably cracked.
Yes. Right below Utah. And Caligula, jungler for 3rd seed EU, Team Peps. Now, I have him #1 in S tier.
He is so good.
Cali he is so good.
Like a real playmaker. On some picks that people don't often expect. Like, it feels like Cali has those moments where they just say, hop in the backpack because I'm going to carry everybody right now. And yeah, really impressive stuff.
And then Chelvin, I have right above RRQ Eeyore in S tier. All 4 EU junglers, very, very high up.
Yes, they're very, very solid.
Next, I have Lutano actually in the S+ tier as well, at the very bottom.
I was wondering where you were going to put Lutano. Okay.
So I was very impressed by his gameplay on Zero Pain. I never really realized how good he was at the game because I didn't know where he lived. I didn't realize he was playing on such high pain the whole time. Yeah, on Zero Pain, he looked just insanely good at the game. I was very impressed by it.
I agree. In fact, I actually feel like Lutano, I think he's better in this role than he was as a top laner, it seems like. I've always been really impressed with Lutano. I think Lutano's an amazing player.
He's very very, very good at the game. Jungler has the most impact, so he really thrives on that, and like he doesn't have to lane anymore, which I think was his weakest aspect before. Next is Trainer. I have Trainer actually above Lutano in the S plus tier.
You're splitting hairs between insanely good players. Like Trainer is so good.
Where would you place Rin?
So here's what I'll say about Rin. I think the thing about Rin is one of the best mechanical players in the game. I feel like Rin is unbelievably good at Pokemon Unite. Rin always cleans his plate. He farms so well. It feels like he farms better than any player in the entire game, and that's why he always shows up to fights very, very powerful. I would absolutely put Rin as an S plus tier jungler.
And where exactly?
Just for fun, I guess I'm gonna have to put him above Yutao, apparently.
Above Yutao?
Okay. I have to at this point, yeah. I think Rin is amazing. I don't really know how to compare these players because they're so different. Like comparing Rin to Lutano, like they're very different styles of jungler, you know? I feel like Rin is a very unique jungler. At least that's what it feels like when I see Rin. It's almost like he's playing the game all by himself at times, which can be detrimental, but it's clearly the strategy that, you know, you guys prefer on LG. You're always putting pressure on different points on the map. I think Rin is fantastic. I have no idea exactly where to put him here in the S plus tier, but I think he's truly one of the best players. But when I look at you guys, it feels like a dream team of players, and at times you embarrass teams, and then at times it feels like, oh, LG is not fully on the same page of how this was going to go down. That's what it looks like to me.
Next, we have So Sad Sam, and I have him in the A tier right below Zinus, so second last in A tier. I think Sam is very underrated outside of Team YouTube fans. I think a lot of pro players I know would rate him lower, but I actually think Sam has insane mechanics on the mages. I've seen him pull off some crazy plays.
Yeah, I think Sam does some really amazing stuff from that position as well. Yeah.
Next, we have OCE. I have them second and third in C tier.
I don't mean to be cruel to OC. I did not think they really showed up in regionals, so I hope that we see a different Oceania at Worlds.
That is the jungler tier list.
At our jungler tier list. All right.
Can move on to the attacker tier list now. Starting off with APAC again, we have Oemo Lewis. All these attackers in Asia looked pretty good mechanically. The issue with attacker players is they're playing more like mages, so it becomes a question of like how good their positioning is. So it's more of like who knows how to position team fights well, because when you're playing like high output characters that have low health, it's about how much damage you can do in the team fight without dying. It's one of the hardest roles for positioning. So starting off, I have Lewis in the A tier. Again, his mechanics are very good. All the mechanics of attackers in Asia were very good. However, he got caught out a lot. Next is Ray. I was a very big fan of Ray. I have him in the S tier. Ray was very, very good on all the Pokemon he played. He played a lot of different Pokemon like A9, Chandelier Mew. He just looked really good at all the Pokemon he played. Very solid overall. Next is Thorfinn. I was not a fan of Thorfinn at all. I actually have him all the way down in B tier. He played like Venusaur, Delphox, Sylveon, Chandelier. First off, it didn't seem like he knew how to play Mew, which is a pretty big issue, I think. And he just looked like an enter. Like, his positioning was so bad. His mechanics were fine, again, but yeah, he got caught out a lot and died. Didn't really look like he knew what he was doing. So next is AXQ, the attacker for RRQ. Number 1 seed APAC West. And I have him in S plus tier, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like this is gonna be very, very high.
He looked like the best attacker in Asia, by far. I was very impressed by his gameplay. Not only did he play team fights in lane almost perfect, whenever his team entered, he stole like almost every objective as well. Very, very impressive stuff. This guy looked insanely good. We'll do Foxy from Team MYS. I was also very impressed by this guy. He looked like the best player by far on his team, and I have him at the top of S tier. This guy was insanely good, actually. I was very, very impressed by him. The only reason I don't have him in S plus tier is he played attacker Venu one of the games. He could have hit level 13 easily before raid, but he decided to not farm his 13. Like, he was just 2 or 3 Adinos off. The difference between level 12 and level 13 beam is absolutely massive. Like, you need that level 13 beam. And the fact he didn't know that means like there's some awareness there that he's lacking. Otherwise, he'd be S plus tier because it's important to know your Pokemon as a player. The fact he didn't know that showed he's still lacking a little awareness, but mechanics, positioning, they were all insane. He's very, very good. Next is Sun's Age, and I was not a fan of this guy. I have him actually below Thorfinn. He also was an enter.
Look at all these enters right now.
I mean, this is the most wild APAC list, I think, so far. We have them in all different tiers. Next is India. We have Badshaw. I probably terribly mispronounced that. I have him in A tier.
Okay, it feels like you're giving a lot of respect to this team. which is interesting.
This 3-core was pretty decent. Badshot was like the worst out of like the 3-core, but he's pretty good at Mew actually, so that's why he's like rated in A tier. But again, he kind of suffered from the Mew one-trick syndrome, where he was really bad at positioning on other Pokemon that I saw him play. That was definitely a big issue. Next is the second seed India, Berserk, and I have him actually number 1 in B tier. So I think this guy's better than the APAC attackers. That's how much of inters they were. He played Lapras Attacker, so kind of an easier Pokemon, but I think Lapras Attacker is actually really good, and he actually like hard stomped the games where he got ahead on Lapras Attacker. So shows he knows what he's doing. He looked good on Gardevoir too, kind of off meta pick, but he looked very good on it too. Next is Secret Ship Japan. On PIUI, I have in B tier.
That's interesting.
Second in B tier.
Earlier, I thought they were actually maybe a little bit better than this.
Really?
I'd like to hear. Yeah, I don't know. They seem to actually position themselves really well. I feel like they weren't dancing a lot, but I didn't watch all their games.
This is actually not based off Grand Finals because again, MJK had a sub player in Grand Finals, so I don't really kind of count that series. You have like a support playing jungler off meta, like they're off role, you know. So the other games before this, like especially MJK versus Secret Ship, the reason Secret Ship lost was like PIUI getting caught out very easily by their actual jungler. Like again, the mechanics of these Asian attackers are very good still. You can easily int, especially at like Ray fights, he was like losing the game for them just by walking up too far in a lot of the fights. That is why he's rated so lowly. Next is, I call this guy Nui. This is the attacker for MJK that was actually missing for the Grand Finals. So this is the missing player in Grand Finals. And I actually had them in S tier. I think it was like a complete game changer that MJK didn't have this guy for Grand Finals, because he was like probably the best Mew player I saw in Asia. Yeah. He was very good at Mew. He also played Cramorant. His Cramorant games, he popped off. I think it was actually against Mame's team that he played Cramorant and beat them. I could be wrong, but yeah, I was very impressed by Nui. I like him a lot. I have him at the bottom of S tier. Next is Team Tamarin. This guy I call BLI. Team Tamarin was interesting because I don't know if you saw the game, but they played Serena top and Machamp Attacker, one of the games. And it was like last year's Worlds meta. That was last year's Worlds meta.
Yeah,
so
pretty garbage.
This guy actually went from like bottom lane attacker to top lane with that game playing Serena. He played Serena top, and then his top laner came bottom and played Machamp attacker. Like I told you about the role swaps, I don't think they're a really good idea, and it's why like this team still qualified for Worlds, but they weren't like number 1. They got destroyed by MJK and Secret Ship still. And so this attacker, he looked very good on Chandelier, and even Serena he looked pretty good on. But the problem is Serena's not meta, so like something has to be off with the meta read, right? I have him in A tier because of that. I believe he's last in A tier so far out of the ones we've rated.
I have not seen enough Team Tamarin. I feel like I saw one of these games. I feel like there are certain picks that are so far away from the meta that it's just pretty rough.
Next is Mame's team. They did a lot of role swaps too, where like he'd play defender sometimes, he'd play attacker, he'd play jungle. For the most part, it looked like his mon pool kind of covered attacker the most. He'd play like Lapras, Glaceon, stuff like that. Honestly, Mame, I don't think is looking too hot this year. I have him in A tier, the lowest rated in A tier so far. So
very
I mean,
he
was very hyped up last year.
Absolute like huge player last year.
Yeah,
they had just so many big moments, especially on podcasts. So
yeah, I just think like, I don't know whether it's a team issue or a him issue, but his strengths on like Serena and why he was so good at that Pokemon, there's other Pokemon he can play in these metas that are like similar, right? Like Buzzwole and Dodrio, stuff like that. So it confuses me why he decided to go the mage route after being such a good Serena player, and he just doesn't look that good on the mages. Like put him back on the bruisers like Buzzwole and stuff, and I think he could do work. He doesn't look like that proficient on like these other types of playstyles, which is why I think he's suffering so much right now. Next is first seed Korea Mule. I have them in C tier actually. So the first C tier. Like,
where are you putting the next one from Korea?
The next one is also C tier below this guy.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that was about to happen.
All the attackers we talked about so far, like their mechanics have been very good, right? These are the first attackers that really, like, even their mechanics were good. We don't even get to talk about their positioning because their mechanics weren't even that good in the first place. I think they're already at that first stage, like they're struggling at that first stage when all these other attackers are at like later stages of improvement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Next we have Wolf. I have Wolf at the top of A tiers. No, actually second in A tier so far. I will say, he's probably, in my opinion, the worst player on Baby Mazo's team mechanically. Obviously, we don't know the inner workings like
Baby
macro.
Mazo's team.
Yeah. I mean, saying 00 sounds weird. I don't know how I'm supposed to say their org name.
I think it's 00.
00, yeah. I'd prefer to just call him Baby Mazo's team. His positioning is fairly decent. He has that going for him. Macro-wise, obviously they're a very good team, and we don't know who's in charge of all the macros pro behind the scenes. So just a very solid A tier. I do think he's the worst on his team. Next is True. I have this guy second in B tier. So I think actually higher rated than the other True guys so far. He was like a Mew one trick, but even on Mew, he was managing to get caught out. That didn't bode well for other attackers he might play eventually. I'm just not a fan of True. Next is Hitman from E7. Hitman actually below Wolfslim. E7 obviously a very solid team. I just think like Reggie's the main star and these other carry players on the team are not that good outside of like Sherlock. He's still very solid as an attacker, just not like the star of his team per se. Next is Don Lux. I have Don Lux in B tier actually, below Secret Ship.
Okay.
So fourth in B tier so far.
Yep.
These South American attackers, I'm just not a big fan of. In like Asia, it felt like the attackers were like very, very good, like carried their teams. And these attackers from the Americas, like South America, Central America, I just don't think are that good. They're more like the reverse where their team kind of carries them. Not to say they're bad players. They just didn't seem as strong as other regions. Same with Not Choco. I have them second in C tier.
Ooh.
These guys also, like they're struggling to be good mechanically, let alone like positioning wise. That's why I have them so lowly rated. However, now we have Qlash, which is Peru now. I've been calling them Qlash the whole time, but they are Peru this year. Their attacker Yane, I think, is very, very good. I have him in S tier, above MJK and Ray. So second in S tier so far. I just think Qlash is a very good team and so underrated this year. They can definitely beat Secret Ship.
Yeah,
so,
they're not being talked about that much.
yeah, people aren't talking about them. Next, I have Ray in last. He's the worst attacker. So from STMN, yeah, I have a lot of the STMN boys in C tier. I just don't think they look very strong as a team.
Wow,
Besides
okay.
Zinus, Zinus looked very good, but yeah, I was not a fan. Okay, what everyone's been waiting for.
People are very curious.
Where do you think I have Toon rated?
I think not having Toon in the S plus tier seems silly.
Okay, yeah, I actually have Toon as the #1 attacker. So
okay, yeah, I mean that seems about right. I feel like Toon's insanely good.
I agree. I know the inside deets, so I know he's like the main macro guy of Taliboa, which is insane considering how well he's playing as well. I just think Toon is insanely good, and like his positioning is probably second best out of all the attackers.
Awesome. Yeah, I think he's insanely good. Like insanely good, and I think I would be worried for the teams that go against him and have to deal with his Inteleon.
Yeah, I agree. I think teams should honestly ban Inteleon against these top attackers.
Yes, I totally agree. Toon, S plus. All right.
Next is Sixies, and I have them second in S tier. I think Nan struggles from the roll issues, but Sixies was a very solid pickup. I knew he was extremely good. He was a friend of mine before Nouns picked him up. I think Sixies is very good. Next is I-Class. I actually have I-Class above Sixies. That's how impressed I was by his performance in regionals. He's the attacker for Team Peps. He was hitting level 9, A9 attacker like every game, even against like Taliboba.
So insanely good on that A9.
Probably the best A9 at Worlds actually. So definitely a guy to watch out for.
Still doing great. So,
A9 is actually like very good. You'll definitely see a lot of A9 at Worlds too. Next is Lundaru. I have them at the top of A tier. So Lundaru is one of those players that's very good mechanically, but struggles with positioning. And they actually struggle with laning as well. He's very insane at secures, which makes me wonder why he's so bad at lane. It's definitely interesting. Next is Otter. So I actually have Otter as the second best attacker in the world.
I was gonna say I think Otter is truly crap.
And like
especially Otter on Mew is disgusting. Like he is disgusting on this Pokemon. It makes me sick. I'm gonna throw up Slash.
Best Mew in the world in my opinion, and I believe he has the best positioning in the world too. When I said Tuna's second best position, I think Otter is like #1 at that. So
yeah, insanely good.
Next is Yeetfan. I have Yeetfan right below Sixies, and I think Yeet is insane at the Pokemon he plays. I just think it's such a detriment to his team that he still doesn't know how to play Mew. Like he would be close to S plus tier in my opinion if he knew how to play Mew. So it is your time to rate my team again. Let's hear it.
This is hard because I'll tell you what, before regionals, I will say that I feel like Curios's place has just been confusing to me. I feel like they've been having trouble. Maybe I'm wrong, but just from an outside perspective, I was just like, it feels like they have not been as impactful as they have previously. I thought at regionals though, he looked fantastic.
Me too.
Like,
I thought
so
he played insanely good.
I thought he played out of his mind good at regionals. I don't really know where to put him because I feel like this has been such an up and down down year. I would probably put him, I'm not trying to be mean to him, but maybe near the bottom of S or top of A. But it's just because it's been a rocky year. At regionals, I thought he shined so hard. Where did you put your teammates?
So I actually had him rated as second in S tier.
Okay, I could see that. He's a great player. At regionals, I thought I've never seen him play better this entire year. I thought he was the best he's ever played, which is, that's what you want. The player who can turn it on when it counts.
I think his main detriment is he hasn't really one-tricked one of the best attackers yet this year. Otherwise, he'd be S+ tier in my opinion. Next is Chaotic. So I have Chaotic at the bottom of A tier. I mean, Chaotic is my homeboy, probably one of my best friends in Unite, if not my best friend in Unite. So
that's how
we're really excited.
Okay.
We've always had a very honest relationship with each other. So I'm not going to be biased just because he's my best friend. His macro is extremely, extremely good. Team YouTube, before they picked him up, looked like a completely different team. Like his macro and how he views the game, he really helped that team. I think his callouts and just macro in the game are insanely good and a benefit to any team. He has like grandpa reaction speeds, so his mechanics really struggle because of that. Next is OCE. I have EXO chilling, actually not in C tier, so I have him third worst in B tier, so above Thorfinn.
What an upgrade. Fair enough.
Yeah, and then I have Shep as second worst in C tier.
Okay, I mean, we'll see. We shall see what's gonna happen with OC. We shall see.
They could prove themselves again, just like last year.
They need to. I mean, they have to, right? Everyone needs to prove themselves after what, you know, the Hunger Games of day one.
Day one is going to be such a massacre. I honestly do not like this format.
Look, I want more teams there. With this amount of teams, they need 3 days. They know this, and I think they're actively trying to get Pokemon to give them 3 days, but they did not give them 3 days.
Okay. This is a format that they had to come up with. That makes a lot more sense. All right, so that is attackers. You have one more tier list to tackle. Defenders. So this is actually the role that I have the most S+ tiers in, I think.
Okay. I mean, it's an extremely important role. You give your team so much, you give your team so much information, and you position for your team. You would do a lot with this role, for sure.
Starting off, we have OMO Tempest. Tempest, I was actually insanely impressed with, and I have him in S+ tier starting off. The second APAC player in S+ tier, I think. He was really good at Snorlax, like very, very good. And he looked really solid on the other defenders too. So he honestly looked like the best player on OMO. I honestly think he kind of carried his team a little, and being a defender player and having that big of an impact on the game is really insane. Next is Ice, and I also have Ice in S+ tier.
This is such an important role, and it's so cool. These players have to be so good.
Next is RBX, and I have RBX in A tier actually. So honestly, he looks not that proficient on a lot of the defenders he played, but he did have a wide mon pool, so that was maybe part of the reason, and that can also be very beneficial. They played Blissey Defender Safeguard with like Eldegoss support on one of the games, so but he didn't look very good on a lot of the Pokemon he was playing. So A tier. Next is Uluna. So I was actually very impressed by Uluna. I have them in S tier.
What team is this?
This is RRQ, so first seed APAC West. They played Lapras a lot because teams kept giving them Lapras. They are very proficient at Lapras Defender. APAC loves Wiggly, so it's either like Lapras or Wiggly they played most of the time. I thought they looked very impressive. So next is Froggy. So Froggy was the defender for no-show last year, I think. So he's been to Worlds twice. I was not impressed at all by his gameplay. I have him in A tier.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
A tier for not impressed at all?
There's a lot of defenders in S+ tier and S tier. So he's actually like in the bottom half of defenders, I think.
This guy's terrible. I've got him in A. S.
Considering the role like in the tier list, A tier is a little low for defenders. He played a lot of Mime actually. He played Mime literally like every game. His Mime was okay, but it wasn't very good. So
Mime is just outclassed right now. It's outclassed too hard.
So next is Not Taiza. I was actually very, very impressed by this guy. He's the support for Cakegalok, and I think he looked like the best player on Cakegalok, honestly. That's like the hardest name for me.
Yeah, I think it's UD Vesawan.
UD Vesawan, yeah. He looked like the best player on their team. He played Blissey, Lapras, Sableye, and he looked very good on all those Pokemon. He looked like the best Blissey, honestly, in APAC. I was very impressed by him.
Where'd you put him?
S tier, right below Luna. Next is Rex from them #1 seed Seoul Esports India. I have him in B tier. I was not impressed by him at all. Teams in India were actually just giving Seoul Esports Slowbro. So he played Slowbro every game, and somehow he still didn't look like he knew how to play Slowbro. Like, no flame. This guy's gonna beat me in groups, so I'm gonna get clipped. But next is 2nd seed India Rook Defender, and they actually loved Mime too. They played it like every game. I have them in B tier below Rex, so I was not impressed by their Mime. Their Mime was actually really bad. Next, I have Secret Ship Gyakubari, and
Gyakubari.
Yeah, they were fairly decent, pretty good. I have them in A tier, right below RBX. They were decent.
I thought they were pretty good. They were playing some Blastoise. They were mixing things up.
Yeah, they were playing Blastoise, Lapras, Slowbro. They did not look that good at Blastoise or Lapras. I remember I was definitely very not impressed by their Lapras. They missed a lot of unites. They didn't really know when to unite in team fights. Next is MJK Sona. I was actually very impressed by this player. I have them in S tier, right below Not Tyza. They did play Umbreon Defender, but they looked very good at it. They played Slowbro a lot, and actually some games they would play Zoroark. So there's like crazy role swaps with Defender and supports and playing like Zoroark. It's only Zoroark too. Only Zoroark, which is funny because I play Zoroark and I think I'm pretty good at it too. So yeah, they were actually very good at Zoroark. So I was really impressed for like a Defender player, which is why I have them in S tier. Next is Team Tamarin, and I just call this guy YT because he has YT in his name. I have them in A tier, right below Froggy.
Bottom of the A tier.
They played like Snorlax and Lapras, and they're actually pretty decent at them. But they played Umbreon and looked really like not that good at it. Their Snorlax was also kind of meh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Their Lapras was pretty okay. Next is Yume. I gave spoilers for this guy. I think they're very, very bad. So I had them in B tier, actually. Still above Rook, but below Rex. Yeah.
B tier is the bad tier for this one.
Yeah, stands for bad. Next is First Seed Korea. I call this guy 2K for 2 Korean letters. I had them in A tier, actually, right below Secret Ship. They actually impressed me. They played a lot of Mamoswine, and they're actually really good at Mamo.
I was wondering if anyone was going to try to bring out the Mamo. It doesn't have the sustain, but you know, it did get a lot of buffs.
Yeah. Next, I have Ward for Team 3 stars, and I have him in A tier, so below YT. They were okay, but I'm not a fan of Team 3 stars. I think they're just bad as a team. They played Blastoise Defender, actually, and they looked okay-ish on it, but overall, just Team 3 stars as a team did not look very good. Next is Baby Mazo's team, Soda. I put this guy in S tier, and I put them at the bottom of S tier so far. They're just solid overall. I think like Valb and Mazo really shine as like the best players on this team, and the other 3 are a little like worse than them. S tier is still very good though. Next is True. I have this guy in B tier, right above Rook. Not a fan of this team at all.
Yeah.
And then E7. So Steven is very solid. I have him in S tier as well, right at the bottom of S tier. I do think Soto is better than them. Their laning phase is not good at all. Like, I think they struggle in lane. They're like mid and late game, like their positioning, like knowing how to play around their team is very, very good. So they just kind of struggle with lane. Next is Kira.
Which team is Kira on?
TMB. So that's Hoenn. They get like 2nd place every time to E7 in their region.
Oh, okay. So where are you putting Kira?
S+ tier, actually.
When the way you were talking about it, I was like, this is either going to be C or S+, but I don't think I've really seen much of this team. I think I'm pretty ignorant to this region in general.
Okay. So Kira is just like a 2-trick, basically. They only play like Mime and Blastoise, but like those 2 Pokemon that they played, they're insanely good at. Next, I have 6K Odolina, which is Fusion, and I have them 2nd to last in B above Rook.
Man, you're not a fan.
Not a fan.
I see it.
Next is Stark. I have Stark at the bottom of A tier. Stark is the defender for Kulash, for their Pero this year, and I've been harping on how I think Kulash is very, very good, but I do think Stark is the worst on their team. He did not look very good. He still looked decent, like position wise, it wasn't that bad, so like the team can still work around him. His laning phase and knowing how his Pokemon worked, he really did not look good, like the mechanics. Next is Draken for STMN Esports. I think you can guess where I'm putting this guy. I'm putting him in C tier, the first C tier.
Yeah.
So
jeez, let's go.
He looked like probably the worst player on STMN. So
wow.
Yeah, not
and
a fan
you've
of this
not
guy.
been kind to this team in general.
I think, yeah,
So.
I think he's the worst defender actually. So
okay,
and worst player on his team. Now we get to the EU teams. So Megu, where do you think I'm putting Megu?
I really wonder where you're putting Megu, because the thing about Megu is I feel like they might be the best Slowbro player, period, but I don't know that their pool is that deep. That's what it seems like to me. However, when they're on Slow bro, it's like perfect. So I don't know what you do with that. I would love to hear your breakdown of this play.
Okay, so I have Megu in S plus tier, but at the bottom of S plus tier. I think their mechanics are probably one of the best defenders. Like, it's actually like one of those players that their mechanics are so good it makes up for the lack of other stuff in the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Next is Bruv. So I actually have Bruv as the #1 defender.
I was going to say the same thing. I think Bruv is unbelievable. Can play just about any defender too and make it amazing.
I do think he struggles on some defender picks, primarily Tree.
What? I think his tree is ludicrous. His tree is actually what made me go, oh, Bruv might be the best defender.
Really?
In
Okay,
the world.
okay. You can kind of like kidnap people on Tree, which he doesn't really know how to do with Woodhammer. And other stuff, just like mispositioning, like certain attacks, stuff like that. And like his Tree is definitely solid, especially in lane. Like all of these Pokemon he's really good at in lane. That's like his strongest point, which I think really helps Nouns because the rest of them kind of struggle in lane. Next is Marv. He was a top laner last year and he role swapped to defender, and I was actually very impressed by his defender. I have him at the top of S tier, so his mechanics very good. He doesn't seem to get caught out of position too much. Like, he just seems to know what he's doing very well. Just everything about his defender very solid. He also struggles with the same Bruv problem where he doesn't know like combos to do. Like, he'll engage fairly well. Next is Gek Okami. So I'm curious where you think I'd place Gek Okami, because if you didn't know this, Gek is actually my mentor to this game. So I
think Gek is sick.
Yeah.
Gek is so good at the. I wouldn't be surprised if you put Gek in the S plus tier.
Yeah, so I actually do have Gek at the bottom of S plus tier. Gek was my mentor actually because I started playing the game late. I started like mobile release, and I actually met Gek in like first month of playing, and he liked me so much. He was like a top 5 player back then in the world. He played with me every day after he met me, and he introduced me to all the top players. So
wow,
I got really lucky meeting him. Yeah. Next is Zugrug. I have Zugrug as the 3rd best defender behind Tempest.
Zugrug's insane.
Yep, Zugrug's just really insane.
Insane level defender.
He's the best Snorlax in the world by far. It's not even close.
Best Wigglies.
Probably best Wiggly in the world too.
Yeah.
Other defenders he kind of struggles at, especially Blissey. Like, Blissey's probably the worst out of his Mon pool. Kind of Blissey meta, like Zugrug struggles at Blissey, so he wasn't able to carry the team as hard as he used to. Next is Nudo, and I have him at the bottom of S tier. Nudo was actually the top laner for ASU, but I don't know if you noticed, like in regionals now, Rolling It Down is their top laner, and Nudo plays the tank. And Nudo actually plays like no EXP share tank, which is really funny, like every game. He actually has insane mechanics on defenders. He's just kind of an inter sometimes. So he has like one play style, and when it works really well. He'll always like just try to go on your side, score, and kind of try to outplay you mechanically on your side, waste as much time as possible.
Well, now we have you, Slash.
Yeah, so.
And there's no way I can rate you. It would never work. It doesn't make any sense. Do you think you could accurately rate yourself?
So I have a rule since I first started esports where I never rate myself ever.
You never rate yourself?
Never.
All right. Well, then it's going to be up to the chat. Chat, okay. Where do you think we put Slash? Obviously, you are on the world champion team. You have a chance to be world champions again. You're clearly one of the top players in the game. But I don't know where. Oh, we got some answers in the chat. We got a C tier. I think that's
C tier. Okay.
We've got D tier. They're coming up with a new tier for you. That's great. Someone says right below Megu. Someone says top of S tier. We've got just below Megu. We have multiple people saying right below Megu.
We could make a Twitch poll.
We could do a poll. But I think people are literally placing you after Zug, top of the S tier, in the tier. I don't think that's a real one. S plus. So the consensus is either S plus or top of S or bottom of C tier. We all know it's C. Just kidding. Everyone's saying right next to Megu, basically. That's where everyone is putting you. Either above or below Megu, somewhere right in there. That's where they're putting you, Slash.
All right. So we can just put me below Megu then. Next is Phil Yumus. So I have Phil Yumus at the bottom of S tier, right above Nudo.
I think Phil settled into that role so well, and you see him dominate a lot of his lanes in really impressive ways. He's very bold. I think he's an extremely bold player. We'll see if it is able to pay off when he gets to Worlds.
I think he's similar to Nudo, where he has one play style that, like, if he can do his own thing, it really works well. He's kind of even more rigid than Nudo. He's definitely very solid, like macro positioning, like all that stuff. Laning, he's actually one of the best laners I've laned against.
So good in lane. Yeah,
so
good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. He's really good at getting engages, which is the weird part. So like he'll get like really good engages without knowing like the full in-depth mechanics of the Pokemon, which shows how good like his positioning and macro game sense is.
All right, and now on to OC.
OC, the region I've been hyping up the most. So I have them both in C tier, but above Draken.
The C tier for OC. Oh, they got the C. They're keeping it. Oh, C tier. You put everyone from OC.
I did put Joe, I think, in like an A tier or something. There's one player from OC not there, but
I'm interested. We don't have this tier list in front of us. I'm curious how you would rank all of the teams.
All the teams. Okay. We could do a version 2 of this where you just rank the teams.
Yeah, we should have done that. We should
have done it for today. But
there you go. Now we have the tier list here for the defenders, or if you're Slash, the supporter, for all these teams. Looking at all this, without going into all the teams, do you have your predictions for your top 8?
For my top 8 teams that make it out of groups, we can actually do that right now. Our top 8.
Yeah. Here are our World Championships group stage. Here we have our 8 groups, everybody.
Personally drawn by Spraggles, actually.
I actually did draw this, and I didn't know how it was all going to go, but it was all one take. All right, let's take a look at it. So Group A, who do you think is making it out of Group A?
This one's a tough one. I think Secret Ship, Peru, and Hoenn are all similarly leveled. A lot of these interactions are going to come down to you're facing a completely different meta from what you're used to and how well you can adapt, which doesn't determine the best team. Because like say these teams were playing like a best of like 7, I think it'd be completely different who wins. But I think who has like the most wild meta that's going to catch the other teams off guard is definitely Hoenn, because they play Blastoise defenders and a lot of teams are not accustomed to the Blastoise Surf defender. And it's actually very strong, especially when you play against it the first time, you don't know how to play around it. I think it'll catch a lot of teams off guard, especially because Japan loves Blastoise.
I think looking at Group A, I don't know enough about Peru and Hoenn, to be fair. I think Secret Ship has home court advantage, which I do think will be a factor a bit for these.
That is true.
I also think Secret Ship is the kind of team where when they're hot, they're going to do very well. And when they're not, they're going to flame out of this group. So I would say it's either going to be Secret Ship or, yes, it's going to be one of the 2 teams you mentioned. Maybe Peru.
You do have to keep in mind, too, that Secret Ship did choke in groups last year. So they might be really nervous about choking again this year.
Totally. For Group B right here, you've got Orangutan, which is nuts, Rex Regum Keon, which is nuts, and you've got Nouns Esports, which just refuses to get knocked out of things. They make it all the way to the end all the time. This is such a hard group. I wonder if the EU meta is as strong as we feel like it is, because this is also the only team to actually really make Talibobo sweat at all. I think Nouns could win this thing, but it's a really tough.
For me, it's not even between Nouns, it's between RRQ and Orangutan. I think they will smoke Nouns, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
The games will be like 2-1. Nouns could even beat one of them, but I don't think Nouns can consistently beat APAC. I'll probably go with Orangutan. That's probably a safe option, but our RRQ could definitely win too.
Group C, obviously, Talibobo is the favorite. I think it would be silly not to assume they're going to win this group. That doesn't mean it couldn't go to 0-0 Nation. I think Oyasumi Makaro, I don't know. They're just going up against 2 insane groups. And then Iclan, I feel like, is in a really unfortunate group. However, they could be a spoiler team.
In my opinion, how Talibobo will operate at Worlds is, well, like how they've operated the whole year is if you can shut down Klaus, then you can actually beat them, because Klaus kind of went unanswered in you. Like no one could answer him in lane. He destroyed every team fight. So he's just like, he's level 9 after the first 3 minutes and just hard carries the game from there, right? And obviously like their macro is very good for keeping their lead, but I think he's actually going to struggle against Baby Mazo's team, not only in lane, but in team fights as well. Like they play a lot of comps that are good at answering like the carry top laners. Like we've really struggled with like playing speedsters or like even carry tops like Garchomp into Baby Mazo's team comps. I think Talibobo actually has a bad matchup into them, so I think 0-0 Nation will actually win the group.
Wow, that would be huge. I mean, what a crazy start. For me, as I look towards Group D, I feel like Amaterasu this is a very good shot for them to win out of this group. Very good.
Yeah, I don't see much competition for ASU here, honestly. So I think ASU will win pretty easily.
I think the only thing that could really hurt Amaterasu here is Amaterasu. Group E has a few strong teams inside of it. They obviously have TTV, the regional finals champs. They have MJK, who we could kind of say should have been number one maybe in Japan.
For me, it's like, I think this group will be absolutely wild. Between all four of these teams, actually, what will happen is Team Peps beats TTV, but then Team Peps loses to like Team MYS, and then TTV beat Team M. It's going to be one of those situations where I think all of these four teams are like very closely matched. Team MYS is probably the worst, like a little worse than the rest of them, but all three of the other teams very, very strong, and I could see them all winning and losing against each other in the group. It would probably come down to like a wild draw situation, and in that scenario, to be honest, I probably see Team Peps being most consistent, not losing. You'd have to like 2-0, 2-0 then the other teams, and I think I could see Team Peps doing that.
If you 2-1 a bunch of teams, you could get taken out by another team that actually just plays better. The only thing about Team Peps, though, they are the kind of team that can lose without scoring a single point.
They'll struggle against like better teams at like early game, but TTV historically has not been very good at early game, so I don't think Team Peps will struggle versus TTV. I think ASU would be a much harder matchup for them.
Group F, a lot of people are guessing Omo Abyssinian is going to move forward here.
I think Omo is a pretty safe bet, but I actually think UD and Team YT are a lot closer to them than people realize. So we'll have some intense games, but I think Omo is a pretty safe bet. I think Team YouTube has like a completely different play style that really catches teams off guard. Team YouTube, like while they might have beaten us in like May, they actually destroyed like other teams like GT that weren't prepared to face them. And I think we might see something similar with Omo.
Group G, who are these teams? I've never even heard of
So
Luminosity. Time to shine. I feel like you have a very fortunate group. These are not the top teams in their regions, except for obviously S8UL Esports, but India in general has not been a very good region.
We were definitely very fortunate to get #1 seed India of like all the regions in our group. I do think the Indian team is actually the strongest team in our group. People are really underrating it. I think we were very happy to say our group, and we could definitely still lose in the group if we choke, but I generally consider us a better team.
I feel like you guys have a very good shot of moving outside of this group. And then we have Group H, where almost everyone is saying it's E7.
E7 is a given. Kumu is old guys. I looked and they're still called old guys in game, but on this graphic they're called Kumu.
There is a question as to how that sub is going to work out for E7, right?
Yeah.
They feel like the strong team to move forward there. It's crazy to think that certain regions won't even be represented in day 2. Right now, I mean, it's unlikely that we see, at least from some of our predictions, which of course could be totally wrong, but it's unlikely we see Oceania. It's unlikely we see Korea. It's possible we don't see Japan, because Japan has a lot of hard matchups.
Possible we don't see Brazil, and possible we don't see Latam South.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
Group stage is gonna be wild, honestly. As much as this is like a bloodbath and not the best format, it'll definitely be very entertaining. I'm hyped to see every single one of these matches. I really hope we get coverage of all of them, because last year's group stage we didn't get all the matches.
There's no way. I don't know how you would do that. There have to be multiple stations.
Yeah, well, I meant like they don't have to show it on stream, but last time like they didn't even record, which I think they could still record it and release it in later videos, you know?
They
something like that.
Too.
Because like we asked admins to show us some of our games that weren't on stream, and they said they didn't have them.
It's gonna be crazy, man. Slash, this has been really fun, dude.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. I'm glad you joined me for this.
I'm so happy you asked me to do it. I mean, it's exciting. I don't know how this works, you know, our time zone or whatever. Right now, we will be in Japan. We will be kind of finishing day 1 now, next week, which is a weird thing to think about.
So, I mean, we could maybe do an IRL stream where we talk about the best teams beforehand, if you have time.
Yeah, that could be very, very fun. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much. You can check out Slash. You know where to check out Slash, all the important places that Slash is at. And for everyone watching Slash, you can find me on YouTube and Twitch as well.
Everyone knows Fraggles, the heart of Unite.
The heart of Unite. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Yeah, talk to you later, man.
All right, dude. Later.
All right, hope you guys enjoyed the stream. That was a lot of fun. We'll probably make this into a YouTube video too, because people will probably want to see that. I might do another version of this stream where I sit down with my team and we talk about the best players at Worlds after facing them. So if you guys want to see that, definitely stay tuned. I think that could be good content. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in future content videos. Follow me in Japan. I'll probably post lots of pictures on my Twitter. Links in below, or I'm just /Unite on Twitter. So yeah, catch you guys in the next streamer video.